Hello there, Nick Zuccarello here with nickzook.art, and today I'd like to talk to you about character head creation workflows. In the previous video, we took a look at the whole blockout stage, and what I'd like to talk to you about in this video is building up our secondary forms and really selling the likeness of that creature or character that we're trying to build. So let's hop into ZBrush and let's go ahead and get started. All right, using the power of undo history, I've gone ahead and taken the head and pushed it all the way back to where we started from the last video. So this is where I left off, and this is what the head looked like when I got done with the blockout stage. So I'm just going to take the undo history and I'm going to start pulling it forward a little bit. And you can see what I was doing at this stage was what I would say is about the equivalent of doing some sketching. So I'll just leave it right here. And I've got the sphere so I can show you a little bit about what I'm doing here. So I have Damien Standard put on a hotkey for me on here like this. And I was using this brush a lot for this type of activity. You can see it's got a really nice kind of contour to it that looks like something like this if we looked at the profile of the brush. So it's going to go nice and soft from the surface, and then it's going to go to this really crisp point. And then that one's really nice for doing detailed work like this, where I can push in. And if I do the opposite of that, I hold down Alt and I can drag out just like that. And I can do a shape like this for the lips, and I'll just go ahead and hold down Shift to smooth again. Okay. The other thing that I'm able to do with that, if I make the brush size pretty large, I could hold down Alt and I could raise the surface up, and I could do a little bit of smoothing on both sides, and then that gives me a form that looks something like that, right? Then I could start to carve into this a little bit more. So depending on like, are you pushing the surface in and then raising it up, and then doing a little bit of smoothing to that, you're going to get a whole lot of leverage out of that tool. And again, I've already got some major forms in here, and so it's pretty easy for me to come through and do a few lines and then start sculpting those forms in. And I'm not going very deep with how far this is going into the surface. So if I go something like this, I'm starting to build up those wrinkles for the nasal labial fold that we've gotten through there, like that. And then I'm just drawing in some of these forms for some of the cheekbones, something like this, right there, like this. And if I want to pull those edges out, I can hold down Alt, and I'm just lightly drawing on there, and I can smooth that out. So I'm able to build again line work that feels more like drawing almost in a way, and I'm able to do some pretty big form changes with that brush as well. Okay, so this is what I was using for quite a few years. Recently, I've really come to love the Orb Crack brush. I actually have it in the program, and I've got it mapped to a hotkey for me. I'm just using Control-Shift-2 for myself. But if I do B and then O, and I take a look at all the different brushes that I've got inside of the program, you can see that I've got Orbs Crack right here. And again, with this one, it's going to feel a little bit different. So this has got, nice line work to it. Depending on the size of this, I'm going to be able to draw additional lines. But the thing about this one, if I showed you that contour before with the Damien Standard, and it feels something like this one feels a little bit more maybe hard edge. So maybe it's a little bit more like that, I guess. Yeah, and so if I make it pretty large, you can see what it's going to do for me here. And if we make it a little bit smaller, depending on what you need, we can do line work with it, or we can pull out edges on there like that. And so again, depending on the size, I'm just doing some different patterns here. I'm trying to follow the different forms that I see in here and some of the different wrinkle patterns. Now you will have to do some study on your own to try to figure out exactly where that is. You could also get a mirror, and you could start doing some funny stuff with your own face, and you can observe what's happening with the different wrinkles in your face within through there. And if you take a look at the eye, in the corner of the eye, I'll probably go over that a little bit later, you'll probably start to see a pattern that emerges like this, right? And then you can start to do something like this and through here. And then if you smooth, that's going to start to give you this illusion that things are getting pulled, and then you can re-emphasize some of the lines, and if we get back, it starts to read as some kind of structure that's being pulled a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that real quick. The other thing I'm going to do is, just to give myself something to work with, I'm going to put on the standard brush, and normally I've noticed ZBrush has got the default with lazy mouse on this, which is fine. It's going to give you some kind of stroke that feels like this, but I want to turn the lazy mouse off, and then that will double up over the top of itself pretty quickly, and so then I can start to do something like this, where I can start to build up like a nose structure, and I'll just go ahead and remesh like that. I'll get a little bit more of a nostril in through here, and then remesh. And then also, if I want to dig a hole in there, I'm just going to hold down Alt. I'm going to make the brush size a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to dig in through here like that, and then just smooth this out, and I'll go ahead and then remesh. And so now I've got the makings of a nose structure that feels pretty simple, right? And then this is more of like a humanoid kind of nose. I'm going to put it back on the Orbs Crack brush, and then this time, instead of digging in, I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'll build up edges that you see on here, and I'm going to pull this down just a little bit more, and then smooth that out, and then re-emphasize some of these lines right here, these forms. And then if I drag up from here, I can pull back down right there like that, and then just pull off the corner there. Okay, and then I can tell with where I'm working with right now on this. This is not bad for this stage, but if I'm a little bit too polygonal with things, and what I mean by that is if I get in close here, you can see all the polygons on there. That's probably not too bad for the stage that I'm at, but if I start to feel like I need just a little bit more, I wouldn't go too high with this too quickly. I would try to work with this for a little bit, and then get the forms where I needed them to be. I'll just tap 4 for the move brush, because I could also do things where if I need to do more larger proportional changes, I could just do that. And if I drag out with this, let's pull the chin out. Something else that's kind of neat with this brush is if you hold down Alt while you're clicking and dragging out, it'll push out from the surface normal. So that's how I'm able to just drag that out pretty quickly for a chin-like structure that you see there. And then the next thing that I'm going to start working on the head over here is I'm going to start using the clay buildup or clay tubes. Actually, I'm going to be using clay tubes. So let me hold on Alt. I'll click on this, and then I can start pushing this forward in the undo history. And you can see how I start to layer this up for some of the different forms. And so I'm building up the chin, and now I want to build up some of the structure that exists here on the upper part of the mouth. And you can see the way that I like to do this. I like to lay them down, and it does feel like you're laying down strips of clay over the top of each other. And then I'm usually doing that work, and then I start to smooth it out. One thing that I have noticed with this, and I'll just let just a little bit more of this play out about that point right there. What I've noticed about this workflow is if you're careful and you're mindful about the strokes that you're doing, and I want to build it the form of this bottom lip here, trying to make it a bit more round. If I want to keep some of the detail that's in there, I'm going to put on my smooth brush, holding down Shift, and I'm just going to very lightly tap on there. And then that keeps a little bit of the roughness and a little bit of the form. So if you're doing something that's stylized, you probably don't want that. You probably want this to be like ultra smooth. But, it all depends on what you're building. In this case, I'm doing something that feels a little bit more realistic with the textures or the surface quality of it. So if I do something like that, instead of just smoothing this all the way after I've built up the form, so once I'm happy with, how far this thing is sticking out, and another thing I would advise for you to do is always be rotating around the model, always be taking a look at things. Don't stay in one view too long. Some of the best 3D artists that I've seen model, they're constantly doing this stuff, right? So they're moving around the model. Because we're working in a 2D screen, and we're working in 3D, the only thing that we really have at our disposal is to rotate around the model to get a true sense of the volume of that. Okay, and so I'm going to build up this form, and then now whenever I smooth on this, if I hold down Shift and I'm just lightly tapping on there, if I'm mindful about the surface, I can keep just a little bit of this striation if I want. So it's up to you how much of that surface quality you want to keep for that. But that's one way that you can get an automatic texture where it almost feels like under the skin, there's some type of muscle fiber that's going on for there, right? And I'm going to just make this a little bit more bulbous right here on the nose, and then just smooth that out just a little bit, just like that. And then again, what I was doing on here, if I wanted to do a chin, and it's got a little bit of that little chin butt thing, a little split that's going there, I'm going to go in these two different directions like this, and then just kind of smooth right around there like that. Okay, I'll pull up on here. So the other thing that you can do is you can think about that structure, and you can think about the muscle fibers and how that would actually flow on the face. Right here on the nasolabial fold, we've got like a band almost that can come around here like this. Okay, and then just go ahead and smooth that out. And then I will do just a little bit right here for this cheek structure and build this up right here like that. Okay, and that'll soften that up just a bit. All right, so there we go. We've got beginnings of this face structure. Let's hop back over to the head and move this forward even more. So it's a little bit of the same. You can see I built up some more for the eyebrows on here, and then I'm building up the cheekbones. And then this bottom part of the neck where the fatty structure sits and the chin hits that, I tried to build that up just a little bit more on through there. And then now I'm starting to carve into the ear just a little bit. I do think the ear structure is pretty darn tricky. I think it's a challenge to be able to sell those forms correctly. I've got something for you to take a look at. It's a different artist, and so let's load up this material and I'll show you this real quick. Okay, here's the video that I found on YouTube, and it's with Glauco Longhi. And it's a new channel that he has. At least there's some new content on here. And like I was saying, this is a really good piece of content where he's going over the structure of the ear, and he takes you through the whole thing, and he shows you how to sculpt that up. So I have a little bit of fantasy ear going on. It's not exactly realistic, and it's just based off of the human ear. Again, I think this is a really good video that you could take a look at, and you can see the entire process and take a look. I highly encourage it. Okay, moving on with the head, let's go ahead and push this forward just a little bit more, and you can see some of the forms that I built up for working on the ear on there. And you can see after I've got some of the bigger forms done that I'm starting to do things that are a little bit smaller and a little bit more granular. And here's where I started to build up the eye structure on here. And let me go ahead and go through that and show you what I did. First, I was just trying to do like an upper lid and a lower lid, and it was working okay, but I knew that I probably needed more depth in there for me to go ahead and put a sphere in that area for the eyeball. So I went ahead and just dug into the head and just moved forward with that just a little bit. And let me get to the point where we start working on that a little bit. So I need to show you probably over here, at least this, where I'm going to take the brow structure, and I'm going to start building that up a bit more. Depending on how much material that you need, I'm going to make my brush a whole lot larger, and I can smooth that back just a little bit. Just going to pull this up like that. And I know I'm sticking pretty close to a sphere, but if I want to start to round that out, I'm going to build a whole lot more material right here and then smooth that out like this. Let's go ahead and remesh. You can see this is a natural part of the process, is that you build up the surface, you smooth it, and once that's working fairly well, I usually go ahead and remesh the model. And I was telling you at an earlier stage not to jump too far ahead with how much topology that you have. Now, if I take a look at this, I do have the resolution on 792, and it's not that high. Just started off with a typical sphere. So that's basically what the resolution is going to give me right now at that point. So it's going to keep pulling this up and then building this out, and I'll just smooth this out just a little bit. Okay. And what I was doing before with the eye, as I got to that part, again, I was trying to build the upper eyelid like this, and then do the bottom part. And I was trying to make sure that the upper lid flowed over the top of this, and then this one came here. So if this was running like in this direction, this here is going to come out like that. And if you wanted to continue this on, it would do something like that. And that we talked about that wrinkle pattern, and I'll produce something that feels like that in there. Okay, so that was a bit too much. Like I said, I needed to know that I could fit a sphere in that area. So I'm gonna hit undo to get back before I started doing all that. And I know I'm going to put a sphere structure in there. If I want to hold this ridge for the eye, I can hold down control and I can just paint a mask in here. And I know I'm going to hold that and maybe the nose and through there. So I'll just do this. And if you want to hide your mask, you can hit Control H. And that'll hide the mask. If we go back to the standard brush, if you remember those holes that we dug for the nostrils, we can do that same thing and just hold down Alt. And I can really start to get a pretty big size hole in there. If I hit Control and drag, I'm going to get rid of that mask, and then I can just remesh like that. Okay. So that'll get us at least somewhat close to where we're at on here. And you can see everything's pretty darn rough, right? But we're still just working on the forms. And maybe there's a little bit of my ADD brain, but I tend to jump around quite a bit. And actually, I think that works to my favor, and I think it would work to your favor as well. I think when you want to build these forms up, if you stay in one place too long, you run the risk of, oh, that looks really, really good, and I really like the work that I did for that. And then as you start to sculpt around, you need to start to take this puzzle piece and match it with this puzzle piece. And if they're not fitting so great, there's some work that needs to be done to get those to fit together. And you do run the risk of, if you spend a little bit too much time on one area, you might feel a little bit too married to that work that you did. And it's going to be hard for you to go and say, I need to do some work to get this, harmonized with the other forms that I've got. And that might mean you might need to like completely smooth it out or knock it back or reduce the amount of detail. And so what would be better for you is if you could take everything and you continually build it up over time to where it all reaches the same level at some point, right? So you're never caught with a sculpt where like half of it over here is just way down at this quality level, and then you got a bunch over here and it's at this quality level. Everything should just kind of like build like this until you get to this final stage for things. Okay. And so after I got those forms, you can see I switched back over to the um, the Orb's crack brush, and then now I'm starting to um, accentuate some of these forms, and I'm starting to use line work and line weight to say something a little bit more about the depth of like where this surface meets this other surface and through there. Okay. Um, and so I'm starting to feel pretty confident about where I'm going with things, and that's why I'm going ahead and jumping at that part. And you can see pretty quickly with the big masses massed out, and then this work that we just did right here with this line work, the quality level jumps up really quickly doing that. Okay, so before I get into these eyes right here, let me just show you that work that I was telling you just a little bit about this, right? And you might be at this point finally where it's apparent to you that I think I need a little bit more topology to work with, right? This is all very, very rough and through here. And so I don't really need that much topology just yet. So if I was going to do a little bit of work on the eye, just for right now, just a little, um, I wouldn't need to up the resolution on this, okay? But I can tell that in other areas that if I really want this to start looking crisp and I want this to bump up, I'm going to need more topology. Okay. So I'm just doing just a little bit of work on there and then remeshing. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do a huge jump. So I'm at 792. I'm going to push this up to maybe 1200. There's no perfect magic number for any of this. It's just kind of slowly raising it up. And again, if you bump up the resolution, you could use clay polish on there. If I hit that, you can see it it really starts to do like this smoothing algorithm, and it holds some of the edges. If you're doing stylized stuff, you might like that. I've done a lot of work with the sculpt where I don't feel like that's a really good look for me, so I'll leave that alone. I'll just tell you where it's at though, in case you do need it. It's right above Dynamesh, so you can go to clay polish right there like that. Okay. What I found is if I want to keep some of this detail and I need to upres, is I hold down Shift and I just lightly tap in certain areas where if I get in here and I see like way too many polygons, I can hold down Shift and I can just lightly smooth that out. And I do a little bit of that work. And then after that's done, then I can take like the Orb's crack or whatever I'm using for my detailing. And then it's just a matter of doing some of the line work to re-emphasize some of this. So it's going to pull around that form right there like that. And if I dig in, I can hold down Alt and I can raise up around there too. So depending on if you need to push in or pull. So it's going to continue to work around through here. One thing I have found for lips is this crease that we've got here. So if you want that to be even tighter, we can obviously sculpt a line right there in between these two. But then if we put it on something like inflate, I can make my brush a bit larger and then just lightly tap along through there, and then that will make those surfaces run into each other. So if I do that, you can see what's going to happen. But I'm just lightly tapping, and then that pulls those two forms and makes them intersect and run into each other. Now, depending on your resolution, if you go to remesh like this, it might become a whole lot rougher again, and that's just because of the resolution that you're working with Dynamesh. So I might be mindful of that. So I'm just going to hold off on remeshing for a little bit for that. And then I'm going to just do just a little bit more line work with this. I'll hold down Alt, and so I'm pulling this form out. I'm going to do the same thing for this here, like that, to do that, and hold down Shift, and then do a little bit of a ridge. Then if I wanted to do a little bit of these forms, like, we got these ridges on the lips, I'm just very lightly pulling some of this line work that you see on here, like that. And then I'll re-emphasize some of this. And then right now this is nice and soft. If I hold down Alt and I make my brush size just a little bit larger, tapping S, if I build up almost, it feels like to me like a shelf, and then smoothing some of that, I can continue to keep this line. So I'm smoothing a little bit here and on this side. So I'm using the brush to build an edge, and then I'm using smoothing to knock other areas back. So that's all depends on, you know, what you're trying to build. And so if you're trying to get forms that feel like that, that's how you can do that. The other thing is with these medium forms, you can also start to pull out where you feel wrinkles would happen. And again, the best thing for you is get yourself a PRF board and go out and find different forms. It could be from animals, depending if you're trying to do a human animal like hybrid kind of thing. And if you're really trying to find some wrinkles, especially for humans, then just go, you know, find some pictures of older humans and take a look at their wrinkle patterns and look what happens to the skin and how gravity pulls that over time. And then, you know, you've got these different lines that are happening for smile and for frowning and all those different emotes that we do. And you can see what that does to the skin over time, where it just keeps pulling and gravity pulls it down. Okay, so I think that's getting me closer to where I need to be for this. And I'm just going to hold down Alt and drag this out and get at least that ridge going just a little bit more. And then just like we were talking about with these wrinkle patterns, maybe I do something where it starts to feel like it's pulling out a little bit more. Right in through there like that. And then maybe I do Alt and then drag up like that so I can get this to feel a little bit more like an angular form right there. And I could do this if I want to continue that. I could hold on Alt. I could do that here, and then we pull that up just a little bit, just like that. If you want, you could make a little ridge right there and like that stuff. Holding down Alt while I do that, and then just Shift to smooth it. And then maybe I'll do a little bit of a ridge for the nose, like that. Okay. All right, let's go hop back over to the sculpt and we'll push that forward a little bit more. And then this is where I was starting to build up the eye structure. Okay, so let's take a look at that because it goes by pretty quick. So you can see with the orbs crack, then I'm pulling basically out this upper lid, then I do a lower lid through there, then I sculpt down along through there and build the eye bag, or the bagginess at the bottom of the eye. And then I'm holding down Alt, and then I'm dragging along this edge, and then that builds up a ridge right there. And then I just built a little few marks here for like a tear duct system. And just, again, kind of thinking of the wrinkle patterns, and I think that was enough for me at that point, and I'm not exactly sure when I brought in the sphere for the eye. I would say I think I waited way too long on this sculpt to actually do that. So let me show you that here real quick. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to hit append. We're going to go find a sphere 3D. I'll just go ahead and use the gizmo tool. And now a little bit later, we talk about building like something for us to where we can look at what is the pupil and the iris structure of this. And so if I do that, it's pretty easy for me to just take the gizmo tool and then just, if I hold down shift, I could rotate that 90 degrees. And so now I know that that's facing straight forward from me. I'll click and drag this right here and I'll scale this down quite a bit smaller. Let me go ahead and push this forward just a little bit. And with the research that I was doing, if you take a look at the overall proportions of the head, and if you take your eyeballs that you're making, and I'm going to hold down Control and drag out a copy of this. If we drag out, this is not going to be perfect, drag out enough copies to where we have 5 of these. And if I go, I'm going to hold down Alt and then click in the center on the unmasked parts right here. If we go to the center of this, and if this is centered with the head, and we scale these down to where those eyeballs actually go to the corners of, or the outer part of the head here, if we fit 5 of them across like that, that's going to give you the rough scale for what this eyeball should be sitting. Okay. Now I'm working with a sphere. This thing is weird. So this is not going to work that great. So I'm gonna scale this up a bit to where these eyeballs almost come, out through here just a little bit like that, right? And then I only need this one and this one, so I'm gonna hit. I got a hotkey for this, Control Shift W. But that's actually under polygroups where you can do this auto groups, and it'll make a polygroup for whatever is considered an island, right? So these things are not fused together. They might be touching them, like this thing might be touching the surface, but they're not welded together. So it's not a continuous surface. So this is an island. So it's going to make a polygroup out of each one of these. So I can hold down Control Shift and I can click this one here and then click it again, and that will give me the inverse of that. And I can hold on Control Shift, click this one, then this one, and then on my interface I've got this delete hidden. If I hold down Control, that actually sits under geometry and delete hidden, but it's a little bit weird where that sits. So it's under geometry, modify topology, and then delete hidden right there like that. Okay, so I'll hit delete hidden. And then I'll just hit Control W to make one single polygroup out of that. I'll put it on the gizmo tool, and then I'll push these eyes right about here. Okay, so I've got a big problem, right? So my head structure and everything is really a bit weird, right? So if I want to keep those proportions I was telling you about, at least from human form, then I would use something like this, right? Now I can put it on the move brush. I can move this stuff around, and I could fit this to this, right? So it all depends on what you're trying to build here. So it might take a little bit of work and a little bit of finessing. And I'll show you what we're going to do here. So I am going to try to get this to conform the best that I can. Right there like that. And then when I'm done and I get things roughly in a spot that works, then I'll start to fit this eyelid and make sure that's working. So the one thing I can see on here, because we can see these rings on the geometry, and if this is the pupil, he's going to look like he's like cross-eyed right now. So I would need to, from like a front view, start to manipulate this a bit better. And I would need to come here, and I need to push that back a little bit more. And I'm just going to smooth the details out on this. I'll show you what I'll do with the Orbs Crack brush. So if I just get this to roughly be in the right shape, like space for this. Then I'll start to build the eyelid structure over the top of it. And I know this is not this sphere over here is not quite symmetrical. So let me just hold on Control and drag a mask over that. Sorry, hold on Alt and then click on that. I'll just mask that out on the Gizmo tool. I'm not going to be exact about this. Normally I would do a mirror and weld, but I've got this sphere off to the side, so I won't worry about it too much. I just wanted to get it at least in the ballpark for this thing, okay? And so now what I can do, now that I got that sphere in place, I can go ahead and I'll go use the Orbs Crack brush. And if you saw what I was doing before with that, I'm holding down Alt, and I'm going to drag a lid structure right over the top of this thing, right here like this, okay? And then I'm going to drag out past the eyeball structure, and then that'll give me at least the formation of the top of this lid structure. I'm just going to hold down Shift and I'll smooth it out just a little bit. Then I'll hold down Alt and I will drag this one right up to here, okay? One thing I've noticed about these brushes, and especially Damien Standard, sometimes the sphere interferes with when I'm sculpting. So this is where I like to use the solo mode. So I get that set up on a hotkey. I set this to Alt S. And if you ever find yourself where you're trying to do these lids over the top of these spheres, and it's something feels like you're brushing and it's like catching, go ahead and turn the geometry off that's underneath of it, and then sculpt your lines, and then you'll probably get the results that you're looking for. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now, I can tell with this, I need some more geometry. I need a little more resolution. So I'm going to pump this up even higher. I'm going to remesh. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to lightly smooth this stuff out. And then now I can start to sculpt and have a bit more to work with. So I'm going to pull this in here. I'm going to do real quick. That's some kind of bug. I'm going to pull in through here, just like that. And I'll hold down Alt, and I'll raise up. I'll raise up here like that. And we're almost building this like square-like structure. Okay. And then you can just drag right along here, and then that'll control, like, this is the shape of that actual tear duct membrane that meets the eyeball right there. And I'm just going to drag right along here, right there. And I'm going to go right here and then pull out just like that. And you can see we're starting to build up that eyelid. Now I can go ahead and dig in right up here and then pull down a little bit. And if I go too far, you can see it's digging into the eyeball shape itself. So it's got to be a little bit careful about that. And then now I'm going to dig around here. If you've got an older person, you know, this is going to be a lot heavier. If they're younger, it's going to be a whole lot smoother in through here. But at least, even if I wanted to start that, I can hold down Shift and I can smooth that out quite a bit. And I'll just hold down Alt and I'm building up. So I'm pushing and pulling on these things. So because I did a lot of pushing and pulling of this surface to get this thing where it needed to be, I've got probably too much mass right in through there. So I'm just going to take the clay tubes, hold down Alt, and I'll get rid of some of that. So just like normally I'm building up with stuff, but you can also dig and get rid of some stuff. And then now maybe I'll go back through and puff that out just a little bit like that. And then just hold down Shift and then smooth that. And you can see we're starting to get pretty good look here. And now I might take this and then build this back up now. And again, this demo, I'm making some weird spearhead thing. So definitely some funky proportions that are going on here, but hopefully that's enough to get you to understand the techniques that need to happen for that. And then now that I've put the eye in here, I want to readjust maybe some of these forms. And while I'm holding down shift, I do have this on my interface. I can take this weighted smooth mode, and you can see this is under brush. If you hold down control, it's actually under brush, smooth, brush modifiers, weighted smooth mode. So I can go hold down shift and then drag this over, and I can get the smooth stronger. And wow, look at that. That just melts this thing away. So I got to be a little bit careful about that and how much it's going to really smooth that area out. I'm just going to go put that back. I just needed to get that to be pretty strong right there like that. One thing that's nice about this little, this little lever down here is that you could at will change the different smoothing algorithms on there. And then now I'd put this on the move brush, and just because I just can't let this sit, I'm going to pull my lips forward just a little bit. You do something like that. I'm going to check it up here. And this should have a nice arc to it. I mean, it depends on what the look that I guess you're going for, but I do want these to feel like more, I guess, standard humanoid lips. So I'm going to do something like that and then pull this out and readjust that. And this guy is definitely looking, he's definitely looking pretty funky. Okay. So we got something like that. All right, let's hop back over here and let's keep pushing this guy forward and see where we land. So as time goes on, we're just gonna, keep working with the resolution, get the resolution up a little bit more, keep defining these forms. And I feel like the brush strokes get smaller and smaller and more refined. And as you do that, you're going to have to be a little bit careful with how much you smooth on areas. You don't want to ruin detail that you've already sculpted. This is a pretty big hole that was made. We already looked, if we take the standard brush and turn off lazy mouse, we can do that pretty easily. And on here, Glauco Longhi has a video that talks about brushwork and sculpting. Let me go ahead and pull this down and you can take a look at this. This one's really nice. He talks about directional and kind of flow. It's a pretty interesting video, and he's got a lot of good information in here. But one thing that he was using that I thought would be interesting to try out is this Rake brush. And so that's actually a brush from Kingslien. So if you do a search for Kingslien Rake brush, I did find this on his Gumroad pretty easily. So he's giving you a little brush pack that's got a few different brushes that are on here, and one of them is this Rake brush. And so that's the brush that Glauco was using in his video. So if you want to try that out, if you're used to traditional sculpting, you might want to try that brush out and try that out as a look. So I went through and I actually downloaded this little brush pack that he's got. And the way I like to load brushes at times is through Lightbox. So what you can do, I'm going to double click this to load it, and then I'm going to hit the Lightbox and I'll show you what this looks like. So if you go to brush, if you click on any one of these folders, it tells you where they actually sit on your computer. So you can see this is C, Program Files, Pixelogic, the version of ZBrush that you have, and then ZBrushs. If you go into Windows, and this is what I like to do, I make a folder and I keep it on the cloud, and I go ahead and make a shortcut where those brushes sit on the cloud, and I take that shortcut and I throw it into this folder structure right here. You'll get a shortcut inside of ZBrush, and that you just go to brush, hit the shortcut, and then it takes you to wherever your folder structure is. So I've got my own brushes that I've made. I've got some, I call it loose brushes, just not exactly sure where they came from. And I've got other, and then inside of other, then I've got a bunch of different brushes that I've found and people giving away brushes and things like that. So that's one way that you can load these things up and keep them a little bit organized. So as we take a look at this, I was trying to do a little bit of what he was doing, and again, thinking about the overall form, and then maybe following some of the forms with this. And then when I got done with all that, then I just started to smooth the forms back, and then kept a little bit of this textural work that was on there. Again, if you're doing something that's stylized, this might not be the thing for you. But if you're doing something that has a little bit more of a realistic feel to it, then that might actually work for you, right? So with the Rake brush, you can see, again, if I was trying to follow some of the forms, I'm going to go a little bit smaller with this. And I'm just going to rake along through here. And you can go over you can do almost what would feel like cross-hatching, and then that could build up a surface. And if we just lightly smooth some of this stuff out, we can still leave just a little bit of that textural kind of quality to that. Yeah, so I'm personally not the biggest fan of the look of that. I just wanted to try it out and, see how it goes. But some of you might really, really like that as a workflow. So I would suggest take a look at the content, see what Glauco has to say on the subject. I think he's got a lot of really great information. So even if you don't like that brush, I don't think it's necessarily about the brush, but maybe learn some of the different concepts, what he's talking about for surface flow and directional marks on your sculpts. I think that would be well worth your time on there. Okay. All right. So let's hop back over to here and let's push this forward a little bit more. And you can see, again, I'm just going to keep working, refining these shapes. And then I know this part of pushing the history forward starts to chug just a little bit. Okay, there we go. Finally caught up. And I can keep pushing this. I do know on the eyes, I waited just way too long to put spheres in. So this might be embarrassing. Let's take a look where the eye sit. Okay, I actually pushed it far enough to where this was fixed. But if I would have turned the eyeballs on at an earlier stage, they weren't sitting here. And the other thing that I needed to do with this is I needed to put some polypaint information on the eyeballs so I could see this is where the pupil's going to be and this is where the iris is going to be. You can see he looks cross-eyed, right? And that's what I was saying would be problematic for that. Okay, I'm going to push this forward a little bit, and then before I address the eyes on the sculpt, there were a few things I was putting some details you can see on the fins back here, and I know I worked on the face just a little bit more and then pushed some of the wrinkled patterns around the mouth, defined that a little bit, and through there you can see I defined this ridge just a little bit more and through there. And if we keep pushing, this is where it was time to address the eye problem. So I actually needed to go from a front view and refit the eyelids that I had made to the concept that I'd drawn. I was not paying close enough attention to that. So I gave that some bigger scrutiny. And then this is a bit odd for me. Normally in a character sculpt, I like to focus on the eyes and I need to get the eyes nailed first. And it's usually for reasons like this. I feel like if I nail the eyes, I can get everything else to flow a whole lot better. I liked where I was going with the sculpt, so I ignored it and it bit me in the butt. So if you can learn a lesson from me, I might suggest go work on the eye structure, get that all set up first, and that might make your life a whole lot easier and you won't have to do this rework at the end. It wasn't too difficult. I was able to keep most of the sculpt that I had. I just had to position these eyes. And then after I had them in the right place, then it gave me a bit more confidence to keep pushing on them and then keep working on them. And then so this is where I ended up with the final part of this sculpt on here. Okay. And so I hope you seeing me be able to do this playthrough on this will give you some ideas and things that you can work on. Before you go, I did contemplate showing this brush off at this stage. I think it's something that works rather well for tertiary forms, but I'm going to go ahead and show it anyways. It's this brush, and it's called the GIO Soft Forms brush. So if you saw in the previous video, I showed you a video with GIO Nakpil, and this brush, I don't believe the brush was made by him, but I believe the brush was made in honor of him. But this brush is similar to Damien Standard, is similar to the Orb Cracks, and the fact that it does this really nice kind of detailing. This to me feels like if we looked at that contour that we drew a little bit earlier, if this was the Damien Standard brush, this to me feels like maybe what the GIO brush is, like really got this more pillowy kind of effect for things. Again, I want to use this more in the detailing phase, but if you want, this might help you to define some of your forms. And if you don't want this hard edge kind of thing that I got going on there, that was going on from the Orb Cracks brush, this might be a brush that you like. But you can see I'm very quickly with this. If I'm not careful, I'm going to move out of my my secondary form stage, and I'm going to start working on tertiary forms, which is not, it's not horrible. It's just I wanted to break these things out, and I wanted to keep them as separate as I possibly could, right? And so as I got done with this sculpt over here, I think I've set myself up pretty good for, there's not tons of detail on there, but I've got all those major wrinkles that work, and it works from, you know, if I push the camera distance off, I can still see those major wrinkles on there. On this one, I probably am missing just a little bit of, again, if this pushed up into here, would this cause some secondary wrinkles around there, something like that, right? So I thought it would be good to at least introduce you to this brush, so then that way if you wanted, you could play around with it and you could see how that works for you. And I just can't help myself. I just gotta keep sculpting on this. I would want this to look better. I know it's just like some little demo thing, but if I wanted to turn it into some weird odd creature, I think it's starting to look cool enough in that regard. And again, if we loaded some brushes in from Lightbox, if we tap B, you should be able to see some of those ones that we loaded in from there. And actually, I didn't load the GIO brush. I actually am using this enough now that I made a hotkey for it. I made the hotkey Control-Shift-3. That's just mine. And I actually put it directly in where the brushes sit, so it loads with the brushes. So if I tap B, and this is a bit odd, it's the GIO brush. So if we tap B and then T, I've actually got it loaded to where it sits within here, right there, like that. So again, I thought before I close out, I better mention that brush, and it's a pretty nice brush for doing some organic forms and getting some nice pillowy effects on there. Okay, all right. That's gonna go ahead and close this video out. I hope you enjoyed the content. And I hope you learned something, and I hope this is going to push you and help you grow as an artist. So thanks for spending time and sculpting with me.